Hi, I'm Christina, and welcome to this episode of Women's Health, Wealth, and Happiness Interviews to Inspire. This episode is sponsored by Stratapo Women's Associations, Strategy, Opportunity, and Building Better Futures. Our next guest has over 16 years of assisting thousands of neighbors through the steps of building generational wealth through homeownership. She finds her greatest joy to help those around her realize the American dream full of celebration, not frustration. In her endeavors, Julie surrounds herself with a network of like-hearted professionals who share a commitment to providing an exceptional experience for clients. When she's not helping others achieve their dreams, Julie loves to spend her time volunteering for the causes she's passionate about, traveling with her spouse, and doting on her beloved pets, London and Oliver. Please welcome our next guest, Executive Loan Officer, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Julie, tell us a little bit more about you.
Oh, it's always such a loaded question. So professionally, as you had shared, I am an executive loan officer. So in my day-to-day, I help folks either buy houses, whether they're first or their 50th, or I help them make sure that their asset, their property, is working for them through like refinance, consolidation, things along those lines. And personally, I'm an avid traveler. I have a goal of reaching all states before the age of 55. I've got a little bit of work to do, so we'll gladly take some recos. And love to sail, love to ski, love to spend time with my family and my dog. So pretty simple here in Northeast Ohio in the greater Cleveland area.
Julie, your health word is alignment. What does alignment in life mean to you?
So to me, alignment is having everything in order, right? It doesn't need to be like linear order, but making sure that what you want is in alignment with your goals within your health. Like, for example, I like to sail and I like to ski during the winter. My sailing season is unfortunately now done, but both of those are very, very like physical activities. So if that is a goal of mine personally, then I need to make sure that I'm doing the things health wise in order to support those activities. And even beyond that, when we think of like emotional and mental health, especially being in a client facing role where I work with folks either one on one or one on two, like very, very often, sometimes these are really, really stressful situations, either happy stressful because they're buying their first home or there's a reason for them to move, or stressful, either financially they're in a little bit of a pickle or not a great place, or maybe they're moving because they're getting divorced or a parent or someone has passed on. But just making sure that I myself am in alignment with who I want to be and how I can show up for those that I'm serving, and making sure that I'm prioritizing, myself and getting myself ready so that I can be kind of the best person that I want to be personally, professionally, for my friends, for my family, and making sure that I'm keeping all of my goals kind of interconnected and aligned.
Yeah, so you mentioned doing like physical activities like skiing and sailing as some of those things that you like to do. How does that really get into your alignment? Is it mental? Is it physical? How does it work for you?
A little bit of both. So, during the summer I sail. I live, in Cleveland, so right on Lake Erie, and it's a very like social thing for me as well, right? So I first started sailing one because I always wanted to, but two, I joined this women's group because I was in a job that or in a role, same position, but in a role where I was overseeing a lot of folks. I had a team of 20 whom I loved and they were great. But took a lot of like time and energy to make sure that that team was always running. And so as a result, I found that like a leader often is the last one to leave the office or not really. I probably was misaligned in the fact of spending all of my time maybe with work or focusing on other people and not necessarily focusing on, me and what made me happy or what my goals were. And so I started sailing because I knew at Tuesdays at 5 o'clock I had to be at dock, right? Because that boat was leaving without me. So I put myself into a position where it made me, even if it was one day a week, like take that break from my day to day and really kind of supporting everyone else and having that be my main focus, to being at a point that I was doing something for me, that was not only social, but that was very calming because it got me out there on the water, taught me something new, which was really fun. And same with skiing. For my husband and I, we just started to learn about 4 years ago at the ripe young age of 40, which is not usually the time when people are like, okay, let me, strap boards to my feet and go down a mountain. But it was something that we could do with friends. It was something that got us, outside during the winter. And it was something that like gave us another excuse to travel. Not that you ever need an excuse to travel, but gave us an activity to be able to go and explore and do something together that neither of us have ever really done. I mean, he is a much better skier than I am now, but when we started, we were lockstep together. So.
And you know what's neat about both of those is they're outside
Mhm.
activities, getting out of the office, getting off of the computer,
Mhm.
getting a chance to zoom in into something else.
Mhm.
Ah. Can you share a time in your life when you felt out of alignment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, for me, a lot of it has to do with my career, which I love. And so I have worked for my organization for over 16 years and I've held a lot of different hats. And I loved being a leader and overseeing and being able to really be in the business and learn so much about the business. But I, by nature, am a very kind of like giving person. I probably also, have a few control issues, like a lot of us do. And so it was a matter of like giving so much of myself to other things and not really saving enough for me personally, and like the things that were important to me, and even just how I could care for those in my life. So I think that at that point, I felt really out of alignment, where I was doing very well at work. I was, recognized for doing very well. Production was amazing. Had a lot of really, really great things, but just didn't feel as though I was where I wanted to be in all of the different buckets of my life. And so taking a step back has kind of made me, or allowed me to kind of shift and focus on a few other things, and really get back to like one-on-one client interactions, which is something that's always brought me a lot of joy.
That's terrific. It's such a place when we're adults to get that alignment in our
Mhm.
emotional and well-being in that aspect.
Mhm.
You also had an interesting beginning in your health journey of alignment
Mhm.
as a child. Would you share that story with us?
Sure. So I am a 30-year cancer survivor. So when I was very, very young, I was diagnosed with rare cancer in my soft tissue, which also I think created a lot of different perspectives for me as an individual, not just as a young person, but as an adult as well.
What habits have you gained from that time in your life?
So I think that that time in my life, although obviously I was young and I maybe didn't realize them as I was going through it, one really made me recognize and realize that there's a blessing in every curse, right? That there's a positive in every negative. And often I will say like, hey, this is one of the best things that ever kind of happened to me. And people always kind of look at me like, oh, that's weird. But it's a matter of being in a position, one, being in a location, because I grew up in Buffalo, where we had world class care that I wouldn't have gotten really anywhere else. And being in a position where, when you're a young person and you're ill, people will really rally around you and take care of you. And so being able to kind of meet so many wonderful people, have so many wonderful experiences that came from a really not great event, it just, I think, gives you a different perspective and makes you want to push for better or for worse, to make sure that you are always at your best and you're always kind of taking advantage of the opportunity that life gives us.
It's great. I mean, you have such a general positive outlook on life, on everything. What advice would you give for someone who is looking for alignment in their life, both physical and mental?
the doing the work, right? So I think it's a matter of one, really understanding what it is that you want, not just, professionally, not just financially, but like, what do you want your life to look like? And I think sometimes as people, or really as Americans, we don't spend enough time thinking about those kind of things and thinking about like what's important to me, why is it important to me, really what do I want my life to look like, and then making sure that you're doing the things that are going to get you there. I am very much a victim of this as well, of like, hey, I'll do that later. There's plenty of time, you know, no problem. But making sure that you're finding those things that bring you joy and make you happy and bring you to the really the life you want to live, and making sure that you're living for those reasons, not just for kind of work or other reasons that sometimes get caught in the shuffle of, or the focus gets there, like the keeping up with the Joneses and so on and so forth. Now, I do say this as somebody who is like probably a little bit of a workaholic and like does do all of those things as well, but just being conscious of those and making sure that you're doing things in part because you want to. There are some things that we're just going to have to do because we have to do them, but making sure you're finding those opportunities every day to like do something that is for you and that is getting you closer to where you want to be as a human.
Julie, your wealth word is consistency. How do you define consistency as your wealth word?
So consistency are just small little actions over and over and over. If you get on Instagram or TikTok or so on and so forth, I maybe it's just what I'm searching, but your feeds are full of like make millions in a month, or hey, this one idea to retire at 20. And a lot of times in my experience, I'm sure there's people who've done it, that isn't always like building wealth, and building is not just kind of a get rich quick scheme or an overnight thing. Well, yes, you can win the lottery. Yes, you can, hit it big, but for most, that is not the way that it goes. So consistency for me is all about making those small investments, both monetary and like into yourself as well. And to kind of give you a little bit of an example, I remember being probably 22, 23, maybe just like graduated from college and living with a friend who had their stuff a little bit together more than I did at that time, running a room for a couple $100s a month, working for a nonprofit organization that was all about financial literacy, oddly enough, realizing I was kind of broke, right? And so at that point, making it a point to say, like, no matter what, I'm always going to contribute to future me, and making sure that future me was in a position where I could do the things that I wanted, like travel or buy a home, or really be able to fund the life that I perceived at that time that I wanted to live. And you hear, if you listen to like Warren Buffett or others who are very well known in the financial literacy space or just business space, talk about time and market is so much more important than timing the market. And so making those like small incremental, whether that means you're investing in your 401k, whether that means you're investing in mutual funds or stocks or anything along those lines, a little bit and consistently doing it over time is going to put you into such a better spot than if you just don't invest, because either you don't think you know how to, or you don't think you're in the position to. And really, access to being able to invest is more accessible today than it's ever been before. And so it's the consistency of that average that will really kind of get that snowball running over time. So eventually you can be in a position that you're creating the wealth that you need or that you want to retire or travel, or I mean, you can tell that's my passion thing. Or, if you have children, be able to pay for their education, or for grandchildren, whatever that case may be. But if we never start, we never hit the finish line.
What is one thing that you do in your wealth consistency?
So I am pretty adamant that I will always fully fund my 401k. And so I will, right from the very, very beginning of the year, just put it on an an auto deposit, right? So like it never hits my bank account. I don't even have to think about it because if it hits my bank account, realistically, like I probably will find something to spend it on, like most. And I think the other thing that I do is I people might think I'm crazy for this, but I actually have like 17 checking accounts or savings accounts rather, but all of them have names associated with them that are like for goals, right? Like so I'm taking a very big trip to Egypt next October, but it's not an inexpensive trip. So one of them is it's actually called Walk Like an Egyptian, all my 80s fans out there. And so every month I know, like, all right, I need to make a contribution for that so that when I go, I don't have to rely on credit cards. I don't have to rely on anything else. I've already consistently made those deposits. So I'm just getting on a plane. I'm not worrying about debt. I'm not worrying about anything along those lines. I'm just going to go and enjoy it. And likewise, too, I have two nieces and two nephews. And so every other week we contribute like $3, right? It's not a big sum to each of them. And then on birthdays and holidays and stuff like that, we'll give them like $20, $25, right? So not like very, very big. So we're not talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars, but we started it when they were babies. And so when they graduate high school, we then give them a check and it's usually like $3,000, $4,000, depending upon how the market and interest has been, which is like a nice little gift to say like, hey, like use it for whatever you want to use it for. Don't spend it on beer. I mean, I guess if you do, you do, but don't spend it on beer. But like here, like for whatever you want to use it for. And it's $3 every other week. Okay, great. You don't notice that always in a paycheck, especially when it's on an auto deposit. So it never goes into your account. It just goes right into those accounts. It's there and then it just sits there and it grows. But that's, the consistency of a little bit every day or every month or every year can add up to a lot.
That is a cool aunt thing to do.
So I call myself the fun aunt.
Do they know that you're putting the money away?
They do. So two of them have graduated. And like their parents both knew, or like, because it's my husband has some and I have some on my sister's side. So the first two have graduated, so the other ones know by now. But they're always kind of surprised, right, when you are able to hand them like a check, when especially if they're stressing about money or like thinking like, oh, okay, like it's expensive to books or even extracurriculars, gas, things like that.
Yeah, college when you learn the value of a dollar.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And with that in mind, what about your clients? How much do you have to work with them and teaching them about their financial literacy and what they
Yeah.
need to do?
Well, so it depends on the client, right? So I work a lot with first time home buyers. And then I have clients that I've worked with for, 10, 15 years that are in a very different position. What I find when it comes to money and getting in financials and getting them ready, like it's no secret that home ownership is a real, how do I want to put this? Like not trigger to wealth, but like the average homeowner has 40 times the amount of wealth that a renter does, where it's like astronomical. And a lot of that has to do with the appreciation of the property, especially if you look over the past 20, 30 years of how much, homes have increased in value, really in the last 3 or 4 years, especially. So first time home buyers who think, hey, like I want to be a homeowner. Most people aren't ready the first second that they think about it. I wasn't when I first thought about buying a house. I wasn't in this role, but I had no idea about credit. I had no idea about savings or, my parents did a great job of, hey, just put money in your 401k. I don't really know why I was doing it. I just did it because they told me to, and did a great job for like saving for me. But with first time homebuyers, the best piece of advice that I give them is like, okay, go to get approved before you ever really want to buy a house. Like, okay, you're thinking about buying a house now. What it probably means is that you're going to buy a house in 6 to 12 months if you have to do it on your own. Now, sometimes they've got the bank of mom and dad, or they've, grown up with some of those skills and they're ready to go, but most aren't. So the biggest piece of advice that I give them is like, look, you're probably going to pay more on your house than you are on your rent. So take that difference. So say you're paying $1,000 in rent to make numbers easy, and your mortgage is going to be 2,000. So great. When you're paying that rent, take another $1,000, put that into a savings account. So you're actually paying $2,000 a month. One that's going to help you as far as your budgeting to know, do I really want to pay $2,000 a month or do I not want to pay $2,000 a month? And then two, that's going to build in the amount that you need for a down payment or closing costs or even upgrades, painting, garbage. Like garbage cans are expensive. Like all those things that you don't think about. So I do a lot of like coaching that way. I teach some classes as well about, hey, how to get yourself financially ready, like from today to closing day, like what is the process that is far beyond just like a one day, like, hey, this is what it takes to buy a house. Because there really isn't a ton of in-depth education that is out there.
Yeah, and I think that is so important. I mean, so many times people are afraid to talk about money, period.
Mhm.
It's like opening up the robe. What's inside? It's like,
Right.
where are my debts? Where are my assets? Where do you start the conversation with somebody when you're coaching them?
I think you just start with like, hey, really, where are you? If you were to take a piece of paper and write down, okay, what do you pay for housing? What do you pay for transportation? What do you pay for insurance? What do you pay for food? What do you pay for entertainment? What do you pay for? All these different buckets and just write it down. And then actually take, and this is the other thing that I kind of share as a best practice. It's very painful, so most people won't do it, right? But then take 90 days of bank statements or 120 days of bank statements. So 3 or 4 months of bank statements, because that will give you usually a good average and actually add it up. And you'd be shocked, right, at how much you are actually paying. And so much about finance is psychological. There's actually this whole trend, for lack of a better word, in psychology about financial psychology and financial trauma and like how and why we spend money and how it's so rooted into like how we were born and how we grew up and what we were taught or what we were not taught, which I think is fascinating. And there are now you can actually go and get a degree in like financial psychology and being able to, because so much of money is mindset, and it's like anything else, it's like a habit. Like going on a budget or really figuring that out is like figuring out your diet or your macros or counting calories or whatever mechanism you want to use. It's painful, but it works.
And if you had to give someone one habit for their consistency, what would it be?
Just to be mindful of your spending. I actually could probably use this rule, and I heard this, I think, on a podcast the other day. I can't remember who it's from, or I would definitely give them the credit. So somebody said that they save themselves thousands of dollars a year just by deleting all of their credit cards in their internet history. So think about it. Every time you go to Amazon, you have to put in your credit cards. You have to like physically like get up, go to your purse or wallet or wherever, get the credit card, come back and put it in. And if you were to do that every time, would you make all of those purchases? The answer is probably no. Like my husband and I kind of played a game, the Amazon game, that I was a big fan of the buy and return plan. I still am. Where he was like, if you don't know what's in this box when it shows up, like we're just gonna return it. Like you obviously don't need it if it's just showing up. And so we would always laugh and he'd be like, do you know what's in it? And I'd be like, well, I think it's this. And just being more conscious about the facts that you're like spending your money on. And in that vein, like leaving fun money. I mean, sometimes we just want to buy things that we don't need, that are completely silly and we just don't need. So great. Like just set that aside and you should never feel guilty about that.
Well, hello. I don't know if you can see me here. There's my spotlight. Happiness on health, wealth, and happiness. I'm Sylvia Torstein. Happiness. Look. Not only do I have my spotlight, but I have my whole movie theater to myself. Come on over. We'll hang out. We'll watch movies. But you know what else we do? Oh, I'm losing my spotlight. There it is. We bring in our own snacks. See? We bring the drinks. Ho, 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 ho. And then we bring the hot, fiery snacks. But don't worry, the popcorn's coming. I swear it's coming. You're gonna love it. You're gonna. Shh. There's a movie going on here. In a moment, anyway. Private screening at my house. See you there. Bye bye. Your happiness is find the joy. How do you manage to stay joyful?
It's not always easy, right? Like we all have life. So this is actually a habit that I kind of started when I was a director of a banking team. And if you've ever been in a sales role, or like production based compensation, so like commission, so on and so forth, like a lot of times the way that you're motivated is by finance, right? Is by money. That is a lot of times why commissioned roles are paid on commission. Well, in this particular group, we weren't paid on commission, we were paid on salary, which is great. So whether you help 5 clients or you help 50 clients, it really didn't matter, your pay was the same. So sometimes when you're in that type of a role, and it obviously has nothing to do with money, like you've got to find other reasons to do what you do. And I think this goes for any job, regardless of how you're compensated. And so every day we would have like our daily like high five, where it was like 5 things that needed to happen in order for the day to be successful. And some of them were like metric related, like conversations and calls and things along those lines. Some of them were like, hey, you've got to answer all your email, like simple things. But the last one was always you had to find the joy. And finding the joy was you had to find one thing within your day that had zero to do with production. So it couldn't be number of phone calls, it couldn't be anything along those lines. It all had to be based off of something that happened that made you wanting to come back the next day. Because it's so easy, regardless of what we do, either for a living or with our lives, to like get caught in the mundane and forget why we do what we do. So whether that was like, hey, I was really able to problem solve and find this, opportunity for a client, or hey, I had a really great connection with one of my coworkers and we had a fun interaction, or hey, I got to talk to my grandma who I haven't talked to in months, or a friend, like anything along those lines of finding something that made you wanting, I mean, this was work related, but it's life related as well, finding something that made you want to show up the next day that had nothing to do with like a dollar sign or a metric or a number or something along those lines.
What kind of things did you find your joy in?
A lot of times it would be like connection pieces, like, oh, I met this really great individual, or hey, and I will still do this. So 2 weeks ago, I met this super sweet couple. They were in their 60s. They were buying their first in a long time home because they had been homeowners like maybe a decade before. They were working with another company. 2 days before closing, the other company said, sorry, I can no longer close your loan. I can't get you approved. I'm not really 100% sure why, but just kind of said, sorry. And so their realtor is a good friend and supporter and partner of mine, and said, hey, can you take a look? Can you see if maybe you can, make this happen for them? And we were able to, like within, 10-12 days, we were able to go ahead, close that loan and make them homeowners. So a lot of the joy comes from situations like that of like, hey, being able, one, I'm proud of myself for finding a solution. Two, I'm really like happy for the fact that I was able to help this really sweet family, who then sent me this little video after that I will save, which is also a really good thing, is to hold on to those things and even like write them down, or whether it's in a calendar or so on and so forth. I used to make them email them to me as part of their like checkouts, so that you remember when you're having a bad day, or maybe you're having a day where you're like, okay, like there's nothing good about today, I'm just ready for it to be over, to remember like good things are happening.
Yeah, you've been doing this now 16, almost 17 years?
17, almost 18, yeah.
17, almost 18. Wow. So there must be joy in it for you. How did you even get involved in doing this? Did you know you were going to enjoy it this much?
No, because actually when I started, the market was terrible. So I used to work for a nonprofit, Junior Achievement, which, if you're not familiar, takes business professionals and puts them into local classrooms to teach young people about personal financial literacy and careers and so on and so forth. And I still volunteer with them today. And I did development for them. So I would go out and like meet people and talk about volunteering and donating and giving money to the organization. And I went to this. So Dan Gilbert, the founder of Rocket or Quicken Loans, now Rocket Mortgage, had purchased the Cleveland Cavaliers, our basketball team. Well, now 18 years ago. And so he was at this event that I was at, and he was like the keynote speaker. And he was really just talking about like his company and his culture and what he did and why he did it. And I had zero idea what a mortgage was. No idea. I mean, I was like 23. And I was like, I want to work for that man. I don't actually care what he does. I want to work for him. Which is really ironic because one of my roles as a developer is I ran a small gifts campaign. So I would literally like call people and ask them for money, which in 2007, when the economy was terrible, is not the easiest thing to do. And I hated it, if I'm honest. Like it was not joyful at that point. And so the fact that I would end up essentially in phone sales, right, is always kind of ironic to me, and that I do enjoy it so much. But it was a matter of, when you really get to know people and meet people and help people, like it really, I think that that is kind of where my kind of calling came from and stays. Because I would say like what I do does have an impact on those that I'm able to help. Not every single story is a transformation, but being able to help clients like buy their first home, being able to help clients out of really bad situations financially, and like really even being able to be that calm in a storm has been really good. And it's a company that's been really, really great to me at, hard parts of my life and so on and so forth. And I'm appreciative of the opportunity.
Your other finding joy, and you mentioned it here, is also volunteering.
Mhm.
Tell us more about that.
So I have always, I think, been raised this way as well. Like my mom and my dad. My dad was a politician at a local level, and my mom worked in the schools, but was always raised in a matter of like when you have, you give back. And even if you don't have, you give back, right? Everybody has, either time or treasure has something that they can give. And I think that that is something that has really kind of resonated with me as well, especially as I get older. And selfishly, like I enjoy it as well. So I will go into local high schools and talk about I last semester, and soon it'll start next semester, do a stock market challenge to just to some high school students, which is always fun and very interesting of like their perspective. I volunteer here within the city that I live in, where I sit on a committee where we fundraise to help a local food pantry. It's the only all volunteer ran food pantry in the state of Ohio, which is amazing. And just like little ways to say like, okay, like I've been given so much, like let me pass it on.
Is your favorite part about it? Is it the emotion of it? Is it seeing the gratification that they have? What do you love about it?
I think it varies like time to time. I through this committee where we fundraise, it's a group of women through a women's organization that I belong to. And there are probably about 6 to 10 of us who have done it for now for like 7 years, right? In some capacity. You're not always in charge, but you're always kind of on the committee. And one, that's great because you're really doing great things for the committee, but you're also creating a community and friendships within your own community. And then two, with junior achievement, I really believe in it. Being on the flip side of having conversations, so many conversations with, people coast to coast who don't know about financial management, don't know about credit, don't know how to put themselves into a better position, really, because no one's ever taught them or they've never been exposed to it, is one of the reasons why I also think it's very important to say, like, okay, let's get in. Because I also believe that if you have any sort of knowledge, right, like to spread that knowledge, people are going to learn it, but they're going to learn it on like TikTok, or they're going to learn it on Instagram or the internet, which may or may not be accurate. I also read an article the other day that said it was amazing how many TikTok challenges are out there that is actually bank fraud.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that is, yeah. But if you don't know and that's the only thing that you're exposed to, and you think, oh, well, this person has, I don't have an example specifically, but this person has like $2 million. They must know what they were talking about. And then you're putting yourself into a very dangerous situation. Having gone through, I have to be federally licensed and state licensed. So I do like 40 hours of continuing education every year. And so to be able to have those like realistic, like, no, this is the legal facts, as opposed to, hey, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. So always check your sources whenever you're learning something, whether it's financial or otherwise.
Julie, if you could give the gift of health, wealth, or happiness, which one would you give and why?
So I would say health, and reason being, especially because I believe health is alignment and what you want. That if you are bringing yourself to a position where you're physically healthy and mentally healthy, and you are aligned in where you want to be, that should automatically give you happiness if you're doing it right. And then as far as wealth is concerned, when you feel good and you act good, the rest will follow.
Julie, we have a question from our previous guest.
When you think about your life, what object do you keep that matters, that you'll leave behind, will tell your legacy story?
So when I was younger and when I was sick, I used to design Christmas cards that would then be turned into, so I would make the drawings and then they would be turned into Christmas cards. And then the hospital that I was treated at would sell them as a fundraiser, which is why I did, when I was younger, always think that I was going to end up in like PR or development. And that is actually where my career started, because I was so exposed to it when I was younger. And so those, I have a book, there's like 30, 35 of them. It got to the point that they would just call me because they would do corporate sponsors as well and be like, so the Hilton needs a credit card. Can you, or the Hilton needs a Christmas card. Can you like maybe come up with something by like next Friday? And I would keep those, and I think that that would, because that probably also truly started down my path of altruism, right? Of, hey, you do things for the betterment of others. And all of the money from that campaign, it was called the Paint Box Project, went to fund cancer research at Roswell and Buffalo. So I think that that was kind of like my start of, hey, doing more for others and it will come full circle.
Julie, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm going to let everybody know that this is actually our second interview. Something happened in the production room that the first one didn't get recorded. But this was fantastic. I love your story. I love your enthusiasm. I love your knowledge. And I'm so happy to share you with so many people. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was great. Times two.
Well, I hope we can have times three and you can join us for one of our panels, because I would love to share you with some of the other speakers.
For sure. Thank you. I appreciate it.